Hey guys, and welcome to this new YouTube video. As you can see, the background is a little bit different. I moved in September last year, and this is why everything was a bit very quiet here. And as well, I had a huge mental breakdown with Kratos, and yeah. So I know the last video is a little bit longer already in the past, but better later than never, I would say. And welcome to the fourth crafting video for our Kratos cosplay. So yeah, you've heard right, I already made 3 crafting videos for Kratos from God of War. So that you can see the full crafting process, feel free to check out my YouTube channel for this. And today we are going to make together the gauntlets. Gauntlets? Bracer? How do you actually call this? I think I will call this bracer. And yeah, I have the second one as well in the video, but I will show you now in every detail how you can make this. And if you wish to upgrade your skills, don't worry, I got you covered with my book and patterns. You find everything in my shop. Link in the video description. And my Kratos Bracer and I wish you now much pleasure watching this video. Want to give me check? Check. Let's start with the fabric arm wraps worn on both arms. First, I wrap my arm dummy with duct tape to create a template with accurate measurements. Next, I transfer the pattern onto thicker faux leather, making sure to add about 2 extra centimeters around the edges, since some material will be lost during sewing. Always think about that. To help the piece fit the shape of the arm, I made a small shaping cut in the center, but this depends on your arm shape and isn't always necessary. Now the sleeve is turned inside out and it's already finished. To give the sleeve a worn, lived-in look, we scrunch it to create folds and then do some weathering so it looks nice and dirty. I simply use brown and black paint with a sponge to dab it on. Let's continue with the left arm and start with the laced arm wrap. First, I make here again a template and trace into a lighter faux leather this time. We need 2 pieces for this, which we then cut out with the scissors. Then we place the 2 pieces on top of each other and sew them together. We turn the sleeve inside out and sew along the edges again, so it lies nice and flat. At this point, I realized the sleeve was actually too flat and the original design had a nice curve inside. So I carefully cut it open again and added a bit more padding to give it the right volume. Sewing it back together this time worked perfectly and it ended up looking really authentic. From here, I'll let you watch the rest of the process. Now we make the fastening strap from slightly thicker, darker faux leather. The technique is the same. Place the pieces on top of each other, sew them together, turn it inside out, stitch around the corners to make it lie flat, and voila! Using some acrylic paint, we give the strap and the sleeve a worn, aged look. This really helps it feel more realistic and adds character to the piece. To attach the strap to the sleeve, we use rust-colored rivets. I found a big pack on Amazon for just a few dollars. I'll drop the link in the video description in case you're interested. We also attach the rivets to the top and the bottom of the sleeve, which adds even more character. I use a rivet tool to flatten them and make sure they hold really well. Here we add round open eyelets to the sides of the sleeve. Later, a strap will go through them to hold it on the arm together. And finally, we add 2 snap buttons here. So this part is done now and I think it looks pretty cool. Now we move on to the armor piece. For this, I create the ornament design in Illustrator and use my laser cutter to cut it out cleanly. Without this machine, achieving this level of precision wouldn't simply be possible. Then we use a Dremel to sand the edges and add some dents. After all, it's supposed to look like Kratos has been through a battle. Let's get to the paint job. We start with the ornament, which we paint red. I needed here 2 to 3 coats to get full coverage. Then I use my beloved rub and buff to create the metallic look, which is, by the way, my absolute favorite metallic finish. For the final touch, I use rust colored paint to create that reddish aged look. Looks pretty cool, don't you think? Now we move to the right arm. Here, basically everything we did on the left arm is repeated. We start with a template, sew the pieces together where needed, and stitch along the edges from the outside. It's all exactly the same process, just mirrored from the other arm, so nothing really changes here. We'll secure this faux leather bracer with Velcro. I choose this method because Velcro gives a bit of wiggle room if it ends up too tight or too loose. Flexibility is for real a key when it comes to armor, so always think about that. On the original, there's a fold at the top made by real leather. Since I'm using faux leather, I create one myself. I do here some weathering with acrylic paint to give it an edged, worn look. You know how the drill is going now. The lower edge is sewn in place, then I fold the piece upwards and glue the top part since the machine can't handle this thickness. Alright, let's move on to the armor piece. I start by taking my template and trace it onto 5mm high density EVA foam. I cut the same shape slightly smaller from 2mm low density EVA foam. These thinner pieces will be glued to add extra detail and depth, making the armor look more layered and realistic. If you've seen my other videos of Kratos, you know how we add texture using a stone. We heat EVA foam with a heat gun and press the stone on for a realistic finish. We come to my absolute favorite part, as always, the paint job, which gives everything its realism and texture. And I'm sure you are now a professional and you know how it's going. We take here some leather strips about 2 or 3mm thick and sear them around the edges of the painted armor pieces. It's a bit time consuming, but definitely worth it. Then we weather these as well, giving them an aged look so they match to the rest of the armor. And with the red cord, we add these small details here. Then I add some rivets in the marked spots and I seared 3 leather straps here to hold everything together later. Let's move on to this leather flap here. I start by creating a rough shape and then check it on my dummy, adjusting it so it fits properly. As I showed earlier, I also use Illustrator here to create the ornaments and design you see on the leather flap. I then import it to my Lightburn app to cut it cleanly with my laser cutter. By the way, this was actually the first time ever I engraved on faux leather, and as you can see, it worked quite well. The rest of it, you know how it's going. Cut out a second piece, place them on top of each other, sew them together, turn it inside out, and voila! At the bottom of the leather flap, I add a leather strap to fasten it later and sew on a snap button by hand, kept hidden so you don't see it. Normally, there's a small red strap here, but sadly I didn't have one, so I got creative. I braided 3 thin red cords into a thicker one, and to keep the braid intact, I sewed it on by hand. Using a machine would have shown the stitching and ruined the look. I think it looks quite good. As always, I finish with a bit of weathering, so the whole piece, let's say it together, looks old and worn. Finally, I took an old bedsheet and sewed these white strips together. As always, painted them to make them look dirty and worn. And here is the final result. After all the painting, weathering and detailing, it finally comes together. I love how all the textures and layers make it look so real. It's like it's ready for battle. So as always, I really hope that you enjoyed watching the whole crafting process and that you maybe even learned something. Let me know in the comments what you think of this YouTube video. And in general, a like, a share, a comment is very helpful for the algorithm so that YouTube shows us to other creators. And of course, all what we are doing here wouldn't be possible without our supporters and followers on social media. So a huge thank you on this point here to our Patreons. And if you too want to support us by a Patreon, then you can find in the link down in the description. And don't forget, support can be free too by sharing and liking our content. Okay, see you next time. Bye!